Hello everyone, welcome to the series of spectroscopy. After completing colorimetry and ultraviolet spectroscopy, we are discussing fluorimetry, means fluorescence spectroscopy. This is the second lecture about fluorimetry. In first lecture, means in previous lecture of fluorimetry, we have seen introduction theory of fluorimetry and we have also seen types of fluorescence. In this second lecture of fluorimetry, means in this particular tutorial, we are going to see factors influencing fluorescence intensity, then quenching of fluorescence and types of quenching, instrumentation of fluorimetry, then advantages, limitations and applications of fluorimetry. We will discuss each point one by one. So let's start with the factors influencing fluorescence intensity. The factors which affect intensity of fluorescent radiation, means emitted radiation, are conjugation, nature of substituent groups, rigidity of structures, effect of temperature, viscosity, oxygen, effect of pH, then photochemical decomposition and effect of concentration. These are the factors which affects intensity of fluorescent radiation. So first factor is conjugation. Conjugation means double bonds, means unsaturation. A molecule must have unsaturation, means pi electrons, means double bond. Pi electrons are the electrons which are involved in pi bonds, means in conjugation. So only pi electrons can absorb UV or visible radiation. So for the process of fluorescence, it is must that molecule must have unsaturation, means pi electron. And obviously if there is no absorption, there will be no fluorescence. So for fluorescence, the first condition is conjugation. Then second factor is nature of substituent groups. Generally, electron donating groups enhance fluorescence intensity and electron withdrawing groups reduce fluorescence intensity. And there are also some groups which have no effect on fluorescence intensity, means SO3H and NH4 plus are the groups which have no effect on fluorescence intensity. Electron donating groups enhance and electron withdrawing groups reduce fluorescence intensity. Here some examples are given and their effect on lambda, means wavelength, and effect on intensity. Then the next factor is rigidity of structures. Normally rigid structures show more fluorescence intensity than the flexible structures. Rigid structures have more fluorescence intensity and flexible structures have less fluorescence intensity. Here you can see example is given of fluorine and biphenyl. Fluorine, you can see the structure of fluorine is rigid, so it shows more fluorescence than the biphenyl because the structure of biphenyl is flexible. Next factor is effect of temperature. Increase in temperature leads to increase in collision of molecules and therefore it produces deviation. Collision means interaction of molecule with its neighboring molecules. Increase in temperature enhance movement of molecule and enhancement of movement induce collision of the molecule with its neighboring molecules. So increase in temperature leads to collision of molecules and we have seen that collisional deactivation. Collision of molecule and induce deviation and which results in decrease in fluorescence intensity. In short, collision reduces fluorescence intensity and vice versa. Means a decrease in temperature leads to decrease in collision of molecules and which results in increased fluorescence intensity. Next is viscosity. Effect of viscosity is inversely proportional to the collision, means increase in viscosity leads to decrease collision of molecule and decrease in collision leads to enhancement of fluorescence intensity. Means in collision the energy of the molecule is distributed in its neighboring molecules. So if energy is distributed, the intensity of fluorescent radiation will be reduced. So if collision is reduced, the intensity of fluorescence will be enhanced. Oxygen also decreases fluorescence intensity in two ways. First one is obviously oxygen oxidizes fluorescent substance and in some cases It oxidizes fluorescent substance into non-fluorescent substance, and non-fluorescent substance has not capacity of fluorescence. And the second way is it quenches, means it decreases. Quenches means to decrease. It quenches fluorescence because of the paramagnetic properties of the molecular energy present in the oxygen, because it has triplet ground state. Paramagnetic properties means nothing but the property in which the atom is very weakly attracted by poles of magnet but not retain any permanent magnetism is known as paramagnetic properties. Means because oxygen has two unpaired electron, means triplet ground state. This is we have already seen in principle. Triplet ground state is this state in which unpaired electrons are present having same spin. The direction of spin is same. So because of this unpaired electron, means because of triplet ground state, oxygen has paramagnetic properties, and because of these properties it reduces, it quenches, it decreases fluorescence. Next is effect of pH. Effect of pH varies because it depends on chemical structure of the molecule. Here two examples are taken. First one is of aniline and second one is of phenol. Aniline in neutral or alkaline medium gives visible fluorescence, but in acidic condition it gives UV fluorescence. And phenol in acidic condition it is in undissociated form, and in basic condition it is in dissociated form, and undissociated form does not show fluorescence. So phenol in acidic condition does not give any fluorescence, but in alkaline condition it is dissociated and ions of phenol gives good fluorescence. Next is photochemical decomposition. UV visible radiation sometimes leads to photochemical decomposition. In such cases, fluorescence cannot be seen. Hence, a wavelength which is not strongly absorbed should be chosen to avoid such a reaction. Otherwise, errors up to 20% is possible. Next is effect of concentration. It is very obvious that less number of molecules absorb less radiation, and so it emits less radiation. And similarly, more number of molecules absorb more radiation, and so it emits more radiation. But this has to be quantified by an equation, and the concentration limits within which it obeys Beer's law has to be known. The equation is fluorescence intensity is equal to Q into IA, where Q is fluorescence efficiency and IA means intensity of absorbed light. We already know that emission is proportional to absorption. So IA means intensity of absorbed light has to be I is equal to I0 minus IT, where I0 is intensity of incident light and IT is intensity of transmitted light. And by using Beer-Lambert law, where IT is equal to I0 E with the power of negative SEN T, we can derive the final equation of fluorescence intensity, which is equal to Q into IA is equal to Q into I0 into ACT, which means fluorescence intensity means capital F is equal to Q into I0 into ACT. This is the final equation. In this equation, Q is constant for a particular substance or system, then I0 is a constant for an instrument, small a is molecular extinction coefficient, which is constant for a substance, then T is path length, which is a constant of a sample cell, and small c is concentration of the substance. We can also write this equation by F is equal to capital K into capital C, where K represents the combination of all these constants Q, I0 and T. Or we can say that fluorescence intensity is directly proportional to concentration, because capital K is the constant. So fluorescence intensity is directly proportional to concentration, means fluorescence intensity is directly proportional to concentration of the substance. But this is true in low concentrations only, means microgram or nanogram per ml. But in high concentrations, means in milligram, it does not obey this rule. Here you can see in low concentration, this when concentration arises, fluorescence also proportionally arises with the concentration. But in high concentration, fluorescence up to some limit proportionally arises with the concentration. But after that limit, the curve is bended downwards. And this process is known as self-quenching or concentration quenching. Means fluorescence is not proportional with the concentration in very high concentration. It is proportional in the level of microgram and nanogram only. In milligram, it is not proportional with the concentration. Fluorescence is not proportional with the concentration. At high concentrations, often we can see deviations from linearity, which means when concentration increases, fluorescence intensity does not increase proportionally. This is because of a phenomena which is known as self-quenching or concentration quenching. So this is because the emitted radiation before falling on detector is being absorbed or re-emitted by adjacent molecules, means neighboring molecules, which leads to internal circulation of radiation, means energy, and hence deviation from linearity is observed. And in this quenching, two different concentrations of the same substance shows same fluorescence intensity. So this leads to wrong interpretation of results. Therefore, the concentration range in which a substance undergoes self or concentration quenching and the concentration range in which it obeys Beer law, which is known as linearity, should be determined experimentally, and for any experiment only the linearity range should be used. So this was all about the factors affecting fluorescence intensity. Next topic is quenching of fluorescence. Quenching is the decrease in fluorescence intensity due to specific effects of constituents of the solution itself. Quenching means nothing but the decrement. Quenching means decrease in fluorescence intensity due to some specific effects of constituents of the solution itself, means effect of the sample solution itself. And these effects may be due to various factors like concentration, pH, presence of specific chemical substances, temperature and viscosity, etc. Majorly, there are four types of quenching. First is self-quenching, also known as concentration quenching, that we have just seen. Second type is chemical quenching, then third is static quenching, and the fourth is collisional quenching. First is self-quenching or concentration quenching, that is we have seen. At low concentration, linearity is observed, means Beer's law is obeyed, but at high concentration, Beer's law is not obeyed, means the fluorescence is not directly proportional to the concentration. This phenomenon is known as self-quenching or concentration quenching. Second is chemical quenching. In this type, quenching is due to various factors like change in pH, presence of oxygen, halides and heavy metals. The first is pH. Here, with the example, the effect of pH is explained. Example of aniline is taken. Aniline at pH range 5 to 13 gives blue fluorescence, but when excited at 290 nanometer. But at the pH less than 5, aniline exists at cation, and at the pH more than 13, it exists at anion. So, above and below this range, means below 5 and above 13, aniline does not show any fluorescence. So, thus pH affects fluorescence, and thus pH induces quenching. Next is oxygen, that is we have already seen, and the reason for this quenching by oxygen is its paramagnetic property, means its triplet ground state, means its unpaired electrons having same spin. Third is halides and electron withdrawing groups. Halides means chloride, bromide, iodide, fluoride, and electron withdrawing groups like nitro and carboxylic acidic groups leads to quenching. And the fourth one is heavy metals. Presence of heavy metals also leads to quenching because of collisional and triplet ground state. Means triplet ground state as in oxygen and collision. Third type is static quenching. This occurs because of complex formation. Caffeine reduces the fluorescent intensity of riboflavin by complex formation. Caffeine forms complex with riboflavin, and so fluorescence intensity of riboflavin is decreased in the presence of caffeine. And this effect is known as static quenching because it occurs because of complex formation. And the fourth and last type of quenching is collisional quenching. It is the result of several factors like presence of halides, heavy metals, increased temperature and decrease in viscosity. Any factors may be. It is the mixture of these several factors when number of collisions are increased, and hence quenching takes place. Collisional quenching means the several factors increases collisions, and because of that collisional quenching takes place. So this was the four types of quenching. First is self-quenching or concentration quenching. second is chemical quenching, third is static quenching, and fourth is collisional quenching. Self is dependent on the concentration. Chemical is pH, oxygen, halides, electron withdrawal groups, and heavy metals. Static means complex formation, and collisional means collision is enhanced due to several factors. Now we will see instrumentation of fluorimetry. It is quite similar to the visible means colorimetry or UV spectroscopy. Here also, as in colorimetry and UV spectroscopy, the basic components of instrumentation of fluorimetry are four. First is radiation source, second is filter or monochromator, third is sample cell, and fourth is detector. The basic components are same in colorimetry and in UV spectroscopy and in fluorimetry. Radiation source produces the radiation of the required range. Then the filter or monochromator converts polychromatic light into monochromatic light. Then sample cell is used to hold the sample, means sample container, and detector is used to detect the radiations coming from the sample. First is radiation source. Mainly three sources are used in fluorimetry. First is mercury vapor lamp, second is xenon arc lamp, and fourth is tungsten lamp. Mercury vapor lamp at high pressure, means at 8 atmospheres, gives intense lines on a continuous background above 350 nanometer. Lines are seen at 365, 398, 436, 546, 579, 690 and 734 nanometer. Low pressure mercury vapor gives an additional line at 254 nanometer, and this mercury vapor lamp is used as a source in filter type of fluorimeters. Fluorimeters are of two types. First is filter fluorimeters, which are also known as photofluorimeters, and the second is in which the monochromators, grating monochromators are used. They are known as spectrofluorimeters. Second is xenon arc lamp. It gives a more intense radiation when it is compared to mercury vapor lamp, and it is used as a source of light in spectrofluorimeters. Photofluorimeters are basic instruments. Spectrofluorimeters are somewhat advanced instruments. Third is tungsten lamp. If excitation has to be done in visible region, tungsten lamp is used as a radiation source. It does not offer UV radiation, and the intensity of this lamp is also low. Then filter or monochromator. Make a note, student, in fluorimetry, two filters are used. In colorimetry, only single filter is used, while in fluorimetry, two filters or two monochromators are used. As I already said, in an inexpensive instrument like filter fluorimeters, primary and secondary filters are used. Means in photofluorimeter or filter fluorimeters, filters are used, and in spectrofluorimeters, monochromators are used. In filter fluorimeters, two filters, primary filters and secondary filters are used. The function of primary filter is to absorb visible radiation, and it transmits UV radiation, while the function of secondary filter is to absorb UV radiation and it transmits visible radiation. Primary filter is located, it is placed before sample, so it transmits UV radiation, and secondary filter is placed after sample, so it transmits visible radiation. Because in fluorimetry we incident UV radiation and we get, means the radiation emitted are visible radiation. And in spectrofluorimeter, two monochromators are used. First is known as excitation monochromator and second is used emission monochromator. Excitation monochromator provides a suitable radiation for excitation of molecule, means the radiation which is absorbed by the molecule, and emission monochromator, as the name suggests, isolates only the radiation emitted by the fluorescent molecule. Next is sample cell. Sample cells are cylindrical or quadrangular like those used in colorimetry. These cells are made up of color collected fused glass and path length is normally 10 mm to or 1 cm. It need not be made up of quartz because we are measuring only the emitted radiation and we are not measuring absorbed radiation. So even if there is absorption of radiation by glass, it will not affect the results. And in colorimetry, in quadrangular cells, two polished two polished surfaces through which light is transmitted and two ground surfaces for handling the cells are present. But here in fluorimetry all the surfaces are polished in fluorimetry because emission measurements are made at 90-degree angle. Next is detector. The emitted radiation is mostly visible radiation in case of fluorimetry and sometimes UV radiation. To measure the intensity of such radiations, photovoltaic cell, phototubes or photomultiplier tubes can be used. But we use low concentration of substances and the intensity of radiation, emitted radiation is also very weak. So only photomultiplier tubes means PMTs are the best and accurate. In inexpensive instruments like photofluorimeters, phototubes can also be used. Mainly three types of fluorimeters are there. First is single beam filter fluorimeter, second is double beam filter fluorimeter, and the third is double beam spectrophlorimeter. And we have already discussed what is single beam and what is double beam. In single beam there is only sample cell is only there, and in double beam sample and reference two cells are there. Here the basic components of single beam filter fluorimeters you can see. It is an inexpensive instrument, contains tungsten lamp as a radiation source and has an optical system composed of primary filter and secondary filter. Primary filter absorbs visible radiation and transmits UV radiation, and this UV radiation passes through sample cell and it gives fluorescent radiation which is in the range of visible radiation. So secondary filter absorbs UV radiation if there is UV radiation is coming, and secondary filter only transmits visible radiation because we want to transmit only the emitted radiation emitted by the sample cell, and then this emitted radiation goes to the photomultiplier tube, means to the detector for the detection. Primary filter absorbs visible radiation and transmits UV radiation, and secondary filter absorbs UV radiation and transmits visible radiation because we want to measure only visible radiation coming from the sample cell. Here you can see the geometry means the angle of primary filter and secondary filter is 90-degree, and the geometry of radiation source and detector is also 90-degree, because if instead of 90-degree if we use 180-degree geometry as in colorimetry, so in that case the secondary filter has to be highly efficient, otherwise both the unabsorbed UV radiation and emitted means fluorescent radiation will produce the combined effect on the detector response and gives false result. And to avoid this we use 90-degree geometry between incident beam and emitted beam of radiation. These single beam instruments are simple in construction, cheaper and easy to operate, and the range of application can be widened by using different combinations of primary and secondary filters. But the disadvantages are these single beam fluorimeters are not possible to use sample and reference solution at a time because it is single beam, and rapid scanning is not also possible. It means rapid scanning to get excitation or emission of spectrum of the compound is not possible. So these are the basic disadvantages of this type of instrument. This is the figure of double beam filter fluorimeter. In here, two primary filters and two secondary filters are used because in double beam two cells are there. First is sample cell and second is reference cell. So for one primary filter is for sample cell and second primary filter is for reference cell. And the primary filter and secondary filters are individually for sample cell and reference cell. The other mechanisms are same as in single beam filter fluorimeter. It is similar to single beam except that two incident beams from a single light source pass through primary filter separately fall on sample and reference solution, and the emitted radiations from sample and reference solutions passes separately through secondary filters and produces response combinedly on a detector. The advantage of these type of instruments are here sample and reference solution can be analyzed simultaneously, but the disadvantage is that rapid scanning is not possible due to the use of filter. And for rapid scanning, double beam spectrophotometers are used. Here, in place of filters, monochromators are used, and the grating type of monochromators are used. And the main advantage of this type of instrument is rapid scanning, means the speed of scanning is very high than the filter fluorimeters, but here the cost is also high. Here you can see one monochromator is excitation and the second is emission monochromator, means the radiation source, then the excitation monochromator gives the radiation necessary to absorb by the sample, and the emitted radiation coming from the sample goes to the emission monochromator and finally to the PMT, means to the detector. Advantages of fluorimetry are sensitivity, precision, specificity and range of applications. Sensitivity means when we compare this fluorimetry, which is an emission spectroscopy, with absorption techniques, this technique means fluorimetry is more sensitive because here concentrations as low as microgram per ml or even nanogram per ml can be determined. So here sensitivity is high. Next is precision. Up to 1% can be achieved easily in fluorimetry. Next is specificity. Here we can measure excitation wavelength and emission wavelength separately, while in absorption spectroscopy we can only measure absorption wavelength, means the excitation wavelength only. And there is also possibility that two compounds has same excitation wavelength, but the chances are less that two compounds have same excitation as well as emission wavelength. So here the specificity is high than the absorption spectroscopy. And the next is range of applications, means we can measure fluorescent compounds as well as non-fluorescent compounds by this fluorimetry. We can convert fluorescent compound into non-fluorescent compound by chemical reactions. So range of application is also very wide. But the limitations are change in pH affects fluorescent intensity, we have seen that. Then dissolved oxygen also affect fluorescent intensity. Traces of halides, heavy metals also affect fluorescence intensity. UV absorption sometimes causes chemical reactions, means chemical changes. And all elements and compounds may not be fluorescent in spite of chemical reaction. Means there are few elements or compounds which are fluorescent. So this fluorimetry only can be used only for the fluorescent compounds, and if there are non-fluorescent compounds, they can also be converted into fluorescent compound by chemical reactions. But all the compounds cannot be converted into fluorescent compound by chemical reaction. So this is the major limitation of the fluorimetry. Applications of fluorimetry are: fluorimetry is used for the determination of inorganic substances, then the determination of organic substances, then the pharmaceutical applications in these compounds which are fluorescent and compounds which are not fluorescent but converted into fluorescent by using chemical reactions. Then the fluorimetry is also used for the mixture of medicinal substances and then the miscellaneous application. First is determination of inorganic substances. If we take example of aluminium, with the reagent alizarin garnet, aluminium has excitation wavelength 470 nanometer and fluorescence wavelength 500 nanometer, and the sensitivity in case of aluminium is 0.007. So here, based on the excitation wavelength and emission wavelength, we can determine the inorganic substances as well as organic substances also. In organic substances, the example is aminacrin, and the solvent for organic substances here aromatic polycyclic hydrocarbons, indoles, naphthols, proteins, then plant pigments, steroids, etc. can be determined at very low concentrations by fluorimetry. Then pharmaceutical application. It is used for the pharmaceutical compounds which are fluorescent as well as non-fluorescent. Non-fluorescent compounds are converted into fluorescent compounds by chemical reaction. The fluorescent pharmaceutical compounds are decipramine, paraaminosalicylate, then griseofulvine, indomethacin, morphine, quinine, riboflavin, ergometrin are the fluorescent compounds. Then, which are non-fluorescent and can be converted into fluorescent compounds, in that the example is of methyl dopa. Methyl dopa, we are only taking one example. Methyl dopa by oxidation and by alkali rearrangement it is converted into dihydroxyindole derivative. Methyl dope by itself is not fluorescent, but its dihydroxyindole derivative is fluorescent. So we can convert pharmaceutical non-fluorescent components into fluorescent compounds by chemical reactions. There are plenty of examples in which pharmaceutical compounds are converted into fluorescent compounds by some specific type of chemical reactions. Then fluorimetry is also used for the mixture of medicinal substances. And then the miscellaneous applications in which fluorescent indicators, it is used for the determination of indicators which are fluorescent in nature. So in this video tutorial we have seen factors affecting fluorescence intensity, then we have seen what is quenching and types of quenching, then we have seen instrumentation of fluorimetry, then advantages, disadvantages and applications of fluorimetry. Thank you.